Hey guys, welcome back. The title of this video is going to be the high yield savings account bait and switch strategy. Okay. Now the way I came up with this idea for this video was I had stumbled on a YouTuber that had a thumbnail that said high yield savings account 7% APY. 7% APY? Really? So there's a high yield savings account that's just below the S&P 500 return, you know? So I decided to watch the YouTube video, and it was pretty decent, actually. You know, it talked about all the different high yield savings accounts that were out there, what the different options were, the features, and all that, you know. People are always trying to find the best bang for your buck, for your money, right? You want your money to make you money, of course, right? But of course, I wanted to see what that 7% was, right? And the YouTuber at the very end said what this 7% return was, and it was some, you know, unknown, never heard of name credit union, I think in the middle of Kansas somewhere, okay? Okay, and they were offering 7% yield on, I think it was like a combination of a checking savings account or something. And to be honest, it was too good to be true, right? Now, I'm in my intuition forest, right? I've said this before. Go with your gut. Go with your intuition on something. When something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Okay, now this checking account or savings account, whatever you call it, it was a bait and switch, okay? They bait you in for the 7%, right? And then there's all these requirements to make that happen. The first one was this $10,000 limit. So you could only collect 7% on $10,000, right? So it's $700 if you had 10 grand. That's cool, you know? But then guess what? On top of that, you have to do 15 transactions. You need to swipe your debit or savings card, whatever it is, 15 times a month to keep that in place. And you know, the YouTuber was like, oh, that's doable. Really? To save your money, you should swipe and spend 15 times? No. You want to save your money? You don't want to touch it. That's not what a high yield savings account is for, you know? It's so you can put money in and get a compound return on your money, right? So I just thought that was kind of ridiculous. And then I did a couple more searches on, you know, high yield savings on YouTube just to see what other YouTubers were doing. And I kind of saw the same thing. There were some YouTubers that were putting like 5.45%. You know, or 5% typically. Now, how do the banks do this? Okay, well, it's based on this instrument that the Federal Reserve has. It's called the Interest on Reserve Balance, the IORB. I know, I had to look it up. I had to find out what this was. I thought that the interest rate that the Federal Reserve pays to banks was based on what's called the federal funds rate, but that's not true. It's based on the interest on reserve balance, the IORB, this rate that the federal funds sets. So when banks have a reserve, they have cash, they have this reserve amount, they can put it in the Federal Reserve and they can get that rate on a yearly basis, right? Today, January 1st, I looked, it was 4.6% today. So banks should not be giving you more than what the Federal Reserve is going to give them. You know why? Because banks have to make a profit, okay? Banks are in business to make a profit. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you an interest rate, and there's a spread there. There's a difference in arbitrage between what the Federal Reserve is going to give the banks and what the banks are going to pay you, right? So that spread is their profit margin, essentially, right? So if the rate today on the IORB is 4.6%, then a high yield savings should be under that, right? Maybe it's going to be like 4.3%, right? That's a very small margin for the banks to play with, right? Now, do they loan out money to other customers? For sure. You know, they loan it out to mortgages, auto loans, et cetera, business loans. But for the most part, you should not be trying to get a high yield savings rate higher than what the Federal Reserve is offering the banks, because honestly, it's too good to be true. And why do I say that? Don't put your money in a risky position. Banks that are offering something higher than what the Federal Reserve is offering, it's because they're desperate for deposits, okay? That's why I stick my money with safe, trusted institutions. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, banks can't fail. They almost did in 2008, but they got bailed out. The big dogs get bailed out, right? Silicon Valley Bank, you know, that was an unfortunate incident, obviously. They were leveraged too much, okay? And they had bought too many bonds that were going down in value, okay? So, you know, coming back to that spread, right? I'm going to come back to that. So today the IORB is 4.6%. In my, I have a high yield savings with American Express, right? They have a banking arm along with their credit card. And that's a publicly traded company. It's been around for a long time. That's a safe instrument to use, in my opinion. It's probably too big to fail, right? But the rate I get for my high yield savings there is 3.8%. And it's been going down ever since the Federal Reserve lowered rates. The banks basically coincide with that. They're going to follow the trend of the Federal Reserve, right? And if your bank is not doing that, I wouldn't trust them, honestly. They're going to go with the Federal Reserve, okay? So with that said, there's going to be a difference there, right? Maybe it's a 1% that the bank is going to collect on your money compared with what the Federal Reserve is paying out, okay? And there's a lot of details in that whole process, you know. What I would probably go against is the federal funds rate. Now that rate is a little higher than the IORB rate, and it's just a more common rate that you hear about. Oh, the Fed funds rate is at 4.5%. You honestly should not be putting your money in a high yield savings higher than what the Fed funds rate is, because it's some risky thing that the banks are doing, right? They're leveraging your money in some way, and it's probably a bait and switch as well. That credit union I mentioned that was 7%, I've seen this on billboards. Like even my own credit union I saw was like a 5% yield, I don't know, a couple months ago. And then I looked into it on their website, and it was the same deal. You had to do so many transactions, and there was a maximum amount you could put in. It was like 20 grand or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But I would just be cautious on where you put your money. It's your hard-earned money. And 1% on $100,000 is $1,000. You really want to put your money in some risky bank for $1,000 extra? No thanks. Honestly, don't do that. You hear about these horror stories. There's another one out there. It's HYSA, this HYSA Fintech company, right? They were working with this Synapse Fintech banking institution thing where they were like moving money around from bank to bank or something like that. And that Synapse company went bankrupt. And now all these deposit holders with this HYSA bank or whatever it is, Synapse Bank, HYSA Bank, it's not a bank, it's like a fintech company, right? There's a difference. It wasn't FDIC insured, and people are now stuck. They can't get their money out, right? It's a tragedy because people wanted, what, 1% more on their money, right? Versus just going with like, you know, there's good high yield savings banks out there like Marcus and American Express. Now here's another option too that you can consider. My brokerage account with Fidelity, very reputable company. All the big companies go with Fidelity for their retirement. It ain't going anywhere, okay? Too big to fail. Okay, when you open up a brokerage account, when you put cash into that brokerage account, the first thing that happens is that money goes into what's called a federal government money market, or no, Fidelity government money market. That's the name of the ticker they have or whatever it is. It's just a cash account. And what they do is they put that money in government bonds. And I'm getting right now like 4.1%. So it's beating my American Express high yield savings by a good, 0.25% or so, right? Now, I won't put my high yield savings, I won't transfer my money to my Fidelity because I'll be too tempted to invest that money, honestly. Like if I move all my cash from my high yield savings to Fidelity, to my brokerage account, I'll be too tempted on the next dip, right? If I see like AMD dip a bunch, I'll be like, oh, let's buy some shares, right? So, that's the trouble with a brokerage account, is that cash is sitting there in the Fidelity government money market, which is collecting a nice 4%, but it's too tempting. I would probably end up buying some stocks on the dip, right? You get some big red day, it's like buy. So be careful where you put your money is the moral of this story, right? If it's too good to be true, then it is. It's probably a bait and switch, I don't know if I mentioned this too. I think, what happens is if you don't meet the requirements of these special rates, you don't meet the requirements, they just switch your account back over to a 0.01 or a 0.05% interest rate, right? The account switches over to some other lower end account. So I think I forgot to mention that. But anyways, be careful where you put your money. Be smart about it. Don't get greedy. Don't get greedy over another 0.5%. Who really cares, honestly? If you find a good high yield savings that has, some cool features, like I think that YouTuber mentioned some features like Ally Bank has like ways of like splitting the money into different, categories, like, oh, you're saving for a car or a vacation. If you like those features, go with that bank. That's cool. That's all good. But don't get greedy on the percentage rate. Honestly, it's not enough money to care about getting greedy over. If you want more money, if you want to get greedy and push it, get into stocks. Forget about the 4%, go to 40%, right? That's what it's all about. It's risk versus reward. But for high yield savings, a 1% increase is not worth the risk. It just isn't. Go with stocks. They're less risky, honestly. Like a bank can go belly up. Some stocks out there like AMD or Nvidia, you think they're going belly up? No, they're not. So I'm not going to recommend any stocks out there for people. That's just me. That's just my take on things. Oh, there goes my microphone. Anyways, probably blabbing on a little bit too long. So anyways, you guys have a great day, and I hope this video helps you out. Put your money in a good, safe savings. So anyway, guys, have a great day, and take a look at my previous video, and thanks.